What's up everybody, Johnny over at Witchcraft Whips. Today we're having a look at fancy plaits and how to plait or braid patterns onto your handles, for example. So we're gonna take you through the process from start to finish. But first, we're missing one very important component to be able to braid patterns. And we're gonna go get that right now.
Coffee.
Right, we have our coffee, so we're ready to go. I'm just gonna place that over here for convenience so I won't spill it on any of the whips. Now, what is fancy plaiting? Basically, I would say fancy plaiting is decorative braiding or braiding patterns. Now here we have what I guess you could call the standard whip braid or the standard whip plaiting. We have a checkerboard handle and then we have the herringbone for the thong. And the transition is covered with a knot, but more on knots in another video. Now, this is very decorative in its simplicity, but I would not call this fancy plaiting. Fancy plaiting is more like these two, where you have contrasting strands that create a pattern. For this one is a terry-jackable whip, and here we have some checkerboard pattern with a stair step in it. Goes into this square thingy here, like an eye, and then back into checkerboard, and some more checkerboard, a stair, some stairs again, checkerboard, and then into the herringbone pattern for the thong. Now this is one of my early works, so you have to excuse this one, but I didn't have anything else to show you when it comes to my fancy plaiting. For whatever reason, the whips I make seem to walk out the door. So I'm left with this one for the fancy plaiting right now. And on this one we have some, I don't know if you can see that, we have some flowers, we have a couple of rows here, and some other patterns in here. You can also fancy plait without contrasting colors, like on this Stockwhip handle. Here we have just your regular herringbone that goes into double diamonds and then back into herringbone. If you're gonna do fancy plaiting without contrasting strands, all using the same color, I think, personal opinion, it looks better if you keep the pattern very simple, because otherwise it just looks messy and you can't make out the difference. But you know, maybe herringbone into double diamonds, into single diamonds. Bird's eye works great, but plaiting something like this without contrasting colors would look very messy. Again, personal opinion. So, let's have a look at how to do it, shall we? Oh, and before we get into how to actually do it, I thought I would mention that there are, I would say, two main ways of making your fancy plaits. One is the alternating strand method, which I'm going to show right now, or the other one is the spiral method. Now on the spiral method, if I were to plait this handle right here, then I would have one set of strands. If it were a 16 plait, I would have 8 strands spiraling around the handle in one direction. and tied off at the ends. So it will spiral around this way, maybe. And then I would have a contrasting set of 8 strands going the other way. And then you would use a lacing needle on each of the other strands and go under, over, under, around the handle and worker pattern that way. Some people use it. I never made friends with really, so I just stuck with the alternating strand method. So now what you're gonna need is something like this. Here we have a template for a 16 plait. And what makes this a template for a 16 plait, you ask? Well, when you're doing 16 plait, you have 8 strands on one side and 8 strands on the other side, making a total of 16. And right here we have this center line, and on each side of the center line we have 8 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And on the other side we have, believe it or not, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares, making a total of 16. Now I don't remember where I've got my template, but you can make something like this up for yourself. And you're gonna need a pen and a pencil. Now I'm Swedish. I don't know which of these are a pen and which one is a pencil, but you know, you have to bear with me on that one. You need one pen, pencil, drawing device that you can erase, and one that you preferably can't. So we're gonna draw our pattern on this template. What I start out with is that I just mark with a small dot the squares that I want. Let's do a single row of diamonds to start out. And what you have to keep in mind is that this one is flat, but your braiding will be round, going around something, a handle or whatever. So you have to sort of imagine that this one is folded into a tube. So if I go this, now, so this square right here will meet up with this square right here on the back side of your project. So if I wanted to do a sort of spiral around this handle, then I will go from here to here, and then it will come out over here and continue. So you have to imagine this pattern right here being your handle that you have cut open along the back side and sort of fold it out flat. If that makes any sense, I don't know. Now, we have this single row of diamonds. Next up, let's say we're gonna do some stair steps. Go like this. And then another row of diamonds. Now, the reason I'm using a pencil, I think this is a pencil, whatever, is because if I make a mistake, I want to be able to correct it. So I don't use a permanent marker and then I make a mistake and that will just confuse me later on. Now, let's say I'm happy with this pattern right here, and then I just color in the squares that I've marked, so it will be easier to see. Like so. And then, if you want to, you can continue onwards with more patterns. Well, let's say we put a few flowers in here. And there we go. Now here you can quite clearly see that the pattern sort of meets up in these ends. So we have a flower here in the middle, and one half of a flower over here and another half over here. So this side right here will be this side of the flower over here, because they meet up on the back side. Now what we need to do is to start to work out all the under and overs. And I usually start with my right hand side. I start from the top and work my way down. And then I move over to the top left and work my way down. Now the first part of our pattern is the one right here. Because if you go from the top, let's see, in this row we have nothing. But on this row we have one piece of our pattern. And on my right hand side, the white squares are under and the black ones are over. So in this case, we have under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and over 1. So we put under, I'm going to use the other one, under 1, oh sorry, under 7 over 1. On the next row, the one beneath, we have under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, under 5, over 1 and under 2, over 1, under 2. And we count the 8 squares up to the center line. Next row, under 3 over 1, under 3 over 1, under 2 over 2, under 2 over 2. And then we just continue with this until the pattern is done. And then we move over to the left hand side. Now the left hand side, what you need to remember here is everything is exactly the same, but on this side the white squares are over and the black ones are under. And that's mainly the reason why I start with the right hand side, because jumping in between and alternating what's under and what is over would just confuse me. So on this side, the first move on our pattern will be, let's see, we started with this one, because that one ends right here, and the one below it is this one, and it's the first move for our pattern on the left side. So on this side, remember the whites are over, so we have over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, over 6, 0, 6, under 1 and over 1, under 1, over 1. Next row we have over 4 under 1, over 4 under 1, over 2 under 1, over 2 under 1. And when you're doing this, remember to count what you put in here, because this needs to be correct. So the numbers you put in on each row should equal 8, because we have 8 squares on each side. Square 7 and 1, that's 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because if you miss one square, it's going to mess up your pattern and you'll have a bad time figuring it all out again. On the opposing side, 6, 7, 8, great. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, perfect. And then we just continue. Now I'm going to switch over to a project that I just begun, and this is a 24 plait, and it's actually not a whip, it's a walking cane, or the shaft for a walking cane that I'm putting some decorative braiding on. And we're just gonna, this covers 2 pages, the pattern, so it will end up something like this. Or actually, let's see here. actually more like this. I don't know why the squares are in different sizes, but anyway, you know, the center line continues. Ignore this center line right here because I've added this in some bad software and it's just for me, so I know that this line doesn't mean anything. Now on this 24 plait, instead of 8 squares on each side, we have 12. 12 on this side, 12 on that side, equaling 24. And I basically always start out with a checkerboard pattern just to, you know, get my strands set up and have one color strands on one side and the other color on the other side. So this checkerboard pattern is basically just to help me get set up. And this will be covered by a knot, so this won't be visible in the end project. So taking you through this pattern, we have some a row of diamonds, some stair steps, a row of diamonds, a sort of medallion thingy. Then we have another copy of this section. We have 2 rows of flowers, a couple of rows of squares, and then into your regular herringbone for the rest of it. But we're gonna stick to the first page right now. Now, how do you know where to actually begin your pattern work? Like I said, I start out with just your checkerboard pattern to get yourself set up. And I assume you know how to do a checkerboard pattern. You know, the under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, you know, etc. So you need to find the first row where that pattern changes. In this case, it's the upper right hand side. We have under one, over one, well, let's see, this one. Under one, over one, 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 under one, over one. So that's part of your checkerboard pattern. And same on the next row, on the left hand side. It's just the same under one, over one, under one, over one, all the way. Now here, that pattern differs. We have under one, over one, 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 under 2. So I begin writing out my unders and overs on this row right here. And once we worked this row with this sequence, we move over to the left hand side, and that's the one below it. So this one. Whoop. And on the left hand side, we begin with under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, over one, under one, and over 3 right here. And once I've made that move, I mark this line so I know that I've already done that. And then I move over to the right hand side again. And then we just alternate. And as we go, we mark each line so I know where to begin. And you want to pay close attention to this, because if you mess up, if you accidentally do the same row twice, and you're gonna have a really bad time figuring out what went wrong. And believe me when I say that I've had greater times in the workshop than to try and solve my own mistakes when it comes to the fancy plaiting. So pay close attention and it will work out. And also, as you can see by the markings I made on both sides, I've already begun this project, and then I took a break because I decided to make this video. So when I left off, I put an arrow right here showing that this row is the one to be worked next. So let's get on to the plaiting, shall we, and see how we're doing. Now, here we are. Now, like I said, this is not a whip. This is for a cane that I'm covering and doing some fancy plaiting on. And I've already started the pattern, and I have one set of strands on one side and a contrasting set of strands on the other side. And I started out with the checkerboard pattern just to get me set up, and this will be cut off around here somewhere, and this upper part will be covered by a knot. So what you'll end up with is basically this on down. So this is the sheet that we're working after. And what you can see here we have the row of diamonds, that's right here. And we have the beginning of the stair steps. Now I marked this line right here because this is where I will continue now after my break. So on my right hand side, this side, I will work under 1, over 1, under 2, over 3, under 2, over 1, under 2. So I will take my uppermost strand on this side and work that in on my right hand side. So we'll check back in a bit further down and see how we're doing. So we're well on our way, and now I'm done with the first page. So everything from up here down to here is finished. The medallion that you have here is right here. It looks a bit rough right now, but as we continue downwards, things will sort of fall into place, like it has done up here, and will look even better after rolling later on. And now it's time to switch over to our second page. So right now, oh, sorry about that, we're getting ready to do these rows right here, and then later on the flowers. Now one thing I thought I would mention is when you're dealing with high plait counts, like in this case 24, you have to really pay close attention so that your strands don't accidentally cross over each other like this, because that will also mess up your plaiting. If you take a look, I'm sorry, I have a bit of a focus problem with my camera, but bear with me. Right here, you can see that these two strands kind of lay on top of each other. Focus, please. Whoop. So you have to make sure to have them in their correct positions. We just started the second page, and right now I'm working on this part right here. It has beginning to take shape, and I was looking at the project and seeing this part right here with the flowers would be just about as big as this part right here. So the herringbone pattern that I wanted for at least half the length of the cane would be too short. It would start somewhere around here and only continue down for about, I don't know, maybe 12 inches. So I've decided to throw the flowers into the bin. So from this pattern, we're gonna go straight into the herringbone pattern. And I've made a new drawing, or a new sketch, or a new template for that. So, like I said, we're working on this part right here, and then we're gonna go straight into the herringbone. So, just to let you guys know what's going on and hopefully confuse you a little bit more. So right now I'm gonna continue with this, and we'll check back once we're into the herringbone. Right, so we're back with the last check-in of the plaiting process. We have the beginning done, we have the medallion, the last rows, and now we're into the herringbone pattern for the rest of the cane. It looks a bit crowded right now, but we're gonna sort that out too. So technically that is the end of the Fancyplait how-to. But we're gonna check back later on after the rolling is done and the knots have been put on. I'm not gonna show you how to tie the knots, that might be another video, and we're gonna see the finished cane. So I'll see you back for the last part.